you've tuned into Gila Nehemiah's Sacred Erotic Poetry podcast on sacred sexuality and ascension. I'm so excited to be here. Today is May 19th, and the topic is love over fear. And before we get started, I wanted to just say a few words about me. I am a sacred erotic self-love mentor, spiritual heart guide, author, and poet. I guide women who have experienced chronic trauma to truly trust their heart space and their intuition, their psychic powers, to live a erotically beautiful, blissful life, and to truly release the patterns that bind us, that cage us to past experiences, and take us into spaces and places of fear and choosing love over fear. So that's actually the topic of today. And before I get into it, I want to take 3 deep breaths with you and to set an intention and a short prayer. So let us, if you'd like to, if you can, if you're not driving, if you are listening and you're in a quiet space, I'd love for you to close your eyes with me and to take 3 deep breaths at your own pace. I'd like to set an intention that we are connecting through our heart spaces, that we are calling in all of our light team, our ancestors, God, source, universe, our guides, our fairies, our spirit animals to assist us in this particular episode as we shift from the old fear paradigm into the new love paradigm, and to help us to listen to all of the signs that are being presented to us on a daily basis, and to truly allow ourselves to trust in what we know is the truth in the core of our being, to listen to our third eye and our solar plexus and our womb space and our hearts, to really listen from all of the 12 chakras and open up into the newness of this amazing shift and this great awakening that we are experiencing at this time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Aho, and so it is. Thank you for those of you who are listening today, and I really appreciate you being here. Of course, you can listen to this in Anchor or Spotify, Audible, Stitcher, soon to be an Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts. So excited that this podcast has been expanding into different distribution channels. So today, I really felt on Monday the 17th that a huge shift happened, specifically in my life, in my way of thinking, in my way of feeling, within my bones. I've been very, very tired. I don't know if you have as well. I've felt like I've been going through everything, still being active in things, but yet I felt this like heaviness. And I know I may have stated this before, and I just was like, really, is there something, really questioning if there was something wrong with me or hormonal balance. And I also realized, like my whole paradigm of thinking is shifting. And with that shift, it's not just emotional, it's recalibrating my body. And the neurons, the way they're fused in my brain, like everything is really shifting. And what really brought this to light, because I'm reading The Power of 8 by Lynne McTaggart. Actually just finished it. I listened to it in Audible for like a couple of days, and it was recommended to me by a number of people, and I just decided, okay, I think it's time to read this. And and I actually wrote a piece where I mentioned it in Medium, my blog piece, that you might be interested in, because part of what I was thinking about is I live in Israel. I'm from New York originally. My parents came from India, so I've been around the world, and I've experienced quite a few things. I was brought up in a religious family. I converted to Judaism, Orthodox. So I spent some time with different religions, and it's always actually been a fascination of mine. I was always interested in philosophy and spirituality, and how people congregate, how they pray. So this Power of Eight really did connect to me on a variety of different levels. Both she goes from Lynne talks about this from a scientific point of view. She's a reporter, and also from a spiritual point of view, as well as even she goes into anatomy, so in terms of the brain. So I found it to be quite fascinating. And the premise is that 8 or more people can connect together in with an intention and a specific target in terms of an individual in most cases. And they see a picture, it can be in Zoom, it could be a physical space, and when they focus for about 10 minutes, and she has like Reiki music in the background, and then she does like a power up sequence to just prepare. And so it usually happens over time. That individual who might be experiencing a variety of different health issues or going through dire financial situations, all the time they were healed. Their particular situation was lifted, specifically for health or even financial. That they no longer were going through the challenge or the difficulty. It could be somebody who hasn't been walking for a number of years, like maybe even decades. I mean, it's fascinating. It was just really uplifting to hear all this. A young teenager who fell off a 45-foot, I don't know what it was. He jumped down because of heartbreak and broke all these bones and was in critical condition, and then like recovered through this Power of Intention group. And it wasn't just the body recovering, it was a mindset, it was a mood, it was a completely different, moving into a different paradigm in all cases. And so I found that to be completely fascinating. She also talked about 2 guitarists that played together synchronously, and then it was like their brains fused together when they were playing together. They were like one force. And that was also just like the power of music and frequency, and just the way when people who are doing anything synchronized work together. That's how I thought about it, because I used to dance with other people, and we with a lot of practice to be synchronized, and you're like moving as one. So it's like the idea of oneness. When we open up to love, when we connect to another on either in a in a group level or even as 2, you it's like you move in this force of oneness, this unity. And so that just really caught me. It's like opening our hearts. And so I want to explain the book a bit, because it really just goes back to the point of choosing love. I felt this really in my own life. I was doubting some of my own desires, because I haven't seen them manifested yet. But and I realized, as I was thinking about this particular conflict, the Arab-Israeli conflict, and I live here, and I want to pray for peace. And I realized, what, the peace has to come from within me. The more I can be peaceful with myself, my own life, and pray for peace outside of me, and really, to be selfless about this particular cause, like, and this, what I'd love to see happen. And I am asked to choose love and not fear. Because so many people were connecting with me, and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you near where the conflict is happening? Is everything all right?" And I was saying to them, "Yes, I'm fine," and I'm praying for peace. And I realized, that prayer for peace wasn't really about my own life, because I really don't have any fear for my life or my children's lives. But what I'm really desiring is a shift in my reality, a shift there where people don't have to be afraid. And so, then it became a collective yearning, almost, that this deep desire of camaraderie, of oneness. I have in my neighborhood lots of, There are people who are Arab that are working here, and I'm friends with them. They used to help me when I was in very, very dire situations financially. I stayed at their house. They assisted me, tremendously. It's more like I was so in gratitude, as well as the people who are in my neighborhood. And I realized that there's this really deep connection when we open ourselves to be vulnerable, and that she talks about that in this Power of Eight. When we truly love ourselves, and when we're really, truly, authentically opening our hearts, because in order to even set an intention, you have to be, you're asked to be vulnerable, to ask other people to hold you in their heart space, and to send you love from their heart, expanding and inviting their love to heal you in your situation. And she found, in the case of the guitarist, the various lobes in the brains, that were connected and fusing. I mean, she goes into all this scientific jargon that I can't really explain. Um, well, because that's not really my forte or my strength. Though what did make sense to me is this deep vulnerability, this deep, because I've studied deep connection, and the way we deeply connect is being vulnerable. Like, to really, like, if you talk about an intimate relationship, it's not just about like taking off our clothes and being with somebody, being naked. It's allowing them into our hearts, allowing them to feel our hearts and to open our hearts to each other. That's what I feel is intimacy. That's what my work is all about. It's all about that deep intimacy. And she, even in these Power of Eight, they're like 10 minutes long or more. And we don't go inside each other, particularly speaking in terms of language, but we open our hearts and we share our love, when she describes these situations, because we're meditating, we're sending all of our intention to help heal a particular challenge. And so that really caught my attention, because because what she said also was, not only were the subjects, the people that they were sending their attentions upon, healed, but the people that were actually doing it were also healed, because of this expansiveness, this opening of the heart. And that really, connected to me, because I'm all about the heart. And I felt that that was a big shift that happened to me 4 years ago, was choosing my own heart, choosing my own pleasure, and then realizing that it became selfless. As I was loving myself more, I was giving to others more, because I was just becoming vulnerable. And the more vulnerable I became and the more I wanted to give, I was just receiving, and I was receiving more and more. And the biggest part of that process was allowing myself to receive. So, I'm not going to go into that in this podcast, but if you haven't listened to my earlier one, it's all about receiving. And this one's, it's about choosing love. So when you choose love of yourself, choosing to love another, choosing to love your fellow beings, you're allowing yourself to think in modes of various possibilities, because there's infinite possibilities to anything. Excuse me. And and when we can decide to believe that there are infinite possibilities, then there are so many ways for our manifestations to come true. For people who are wanting to be healthy, that have had some kind of arthritis for years, and they think that there's no resolution, and they came into Lynne's Power of Eight and then they were healed. I mean, it sounds miraculous, but in actuality, if you have the thought, it's happening. And it's allowing that to happen. And if it hasn't happened yet, there's probably still a lot of fear and doubt. So in this piece that I wrote this piece in Medium called Peace Starts Within. And I included a video by Sadhguru, and he talks about manifestation. And he talks just about that. He's like, as soon as you have a desire, if you can be just a simple person and believe, he talks about simplicity, because if you don't question, like childlike innocence, when you just believe, like you believe your parents are going to love you, you believe that you're going to stand up, you believe that you are loved, because you're a child and you expect that, and you deserve it. There are no questions, and there is no doubt. And when we can be in that space, then, you know, everything is possible. Everything happens in its own time because we know it's done. As soon as we've thought the thought, expressed it, it's just done. We've connected to our higher self. We're connected to the energies. We connect to the divine. And then we, you know, the perfect scenarios will be created for that to happen as long as we stay in gratitude at all times. And I feel like that has been, you know, that has been the story that I keep seeing and unfolding, even in this Power of 8, that really just became impressed upon me, that on Monday I was just like, yeah, you know, there is no doubt, there is no question. You know, I just went over all of the beautiful things that have happened to me in my life ever since I decided to choose love over fear. And then that only gets strengthened. You know, it gets even more like the, I don't know. I'm trying to think of this in my mind and explain it, but it like it gets more strong. Like the screws are held even more tightly. It becomes this more foundation to build upon to create this increasingly weaving through this idea. I was just thinking about the words, sorry for the pause, but you know, just really this, like these roots, you know, these roots begin to grow. I think this is the right analogy. So the roots begin to be so deep, and you're, you know, it's so grounded that there is really no room for doubt. You know, there is no other possibility, because you're reading the signs, you're moving with the way the energy is moving you, and you're continuing to surrender and allow. And so your hands are open, you're receiving, you're giving, you're in the flow, like a river. You know, it's just like allowing it to continue to give and give and give and receive and receive and receive. And so there is no stopping. You know, it just is like a continual infinite bliss consciousness. You know, you're always in this bliss consciousness of that, yes, I deserve, it's my birthright to receive love, it's my birthright to receive any material thing I want, and it's my birthright to be happy and to be in pleasure and joy. And I felt like this book, even though she focused a lot on the scientific and the experiment and all of that, what she explained to me, what really was expressed was this expansive love and the ability for miracles and mindfulness, and even in a scientific sense, for those of us that need that scientific explanation, and how it changes the brain functions, and it changes your reality, and it shifts you into purpose and selflessness. So this was another thing that she found, that I mentioned, that I also experienced in my own life. You know, coaches used to say to me when I was struggling, like, you know, serve, you're here to serve, be in service. And I never really understood that until I finally decided to just be in service. You know, really realize this isn't about my ego, this isn't about me. You know, yeah, I'm going to be fine, and for me the biggest challenge were finances. But when I realized, you know what, I surrender that, I'm always taken care of. And that's exactly what happened. I was always taken care of. And I decided to just give from my heart. And that changed it. And that's what changed it here in this situation too, in the Power of 8. When these people just gave from their heart, they just, you know, set an intention and put all of their meditative efforts towards it for those 10 minutes. And that opened up their personal lives. So it wasn't just that the subject was healing, they were healing as well in their own personal lives and their own health issues and all the things that they were going through. And that was like, that was a bonus. You know, they weren't even expecting that. So that was just fascinating. And so again, it's just choosing of love over fear, choosing to give without a return. You know, it's like we don't expect that it's going to happen. We don't go into it expecting that we're going to get anything out of it. We're going into it because this is our deepest desire. and fulfilling the desire and allowing the desire to be fulfilled in any way that it needs to be fulfilled. It's different from like going after a degree and getting it. It's different, you know, because when you have this, let's say if you have a desire of true love, like, you know, you find out that your desire is really about loving yourself and the path to yourself, because that's where happiness begins and ends, you know, it begins in you. And when you realize that, you realize that all of those ideologies that you thought were true aren't really true. All that really matters is you, is your own heart, and giving from your heart, operating from your heart. And that's what I felt, you know, even with all her scientific explanation, I felt again like it was all about the heart, you know, more hearts together, you know, beat as one. And when we beat as one, we our vibration multiplies and our frequencies increases and more healing energy is sent and defying all logic. So this is where I feel the shift is happening. It's going to be continuing to happen, is in this area of opening our hearts and really being vulnerable, because, you know, I studied deep connection, and that's what it's all about. You know, when you're vulnerable with strangers, you know, you allow yourself to be safe. You allow yourself to trust that whatever you're going to share is going to be cherished. And it always is, because when you believe that deep in your heart, you're safe. The universe is holding you. You are loved. You know, I was in very precarious situations in my life, and I never doubted that I would be fine, and nothing ever happened to me. And so the reason I wrote that piece about peace starts within was because when we can find our own alignment, when we can trust ourselves enough to open our hearts and be at peace with ourselves, then we're going to see, it may take time, but there will be peace without. You know, the more that we become centered in ourselves and in our own beliefs, and we begin to speak about them. Well, this was a challenge when I wrote the blog post, was to actually share my truth, because it's easy to speak you know, to our own choir, right, to the people that we love that know are going to listen to us. But what about the people who are going to question me? What about the people that may disagree with me? You know, what about the people who may not see it that way? And so there was some fear for me, but you know what, I said, this is the moment. I'm choosing love over fear. I'm choosing my own self-love and my own truth over anything else that's going to happen. And that was an important moment for me. That was an important shift, because the more I stay in my own sovereign truth, that opens up the floor for others to do that as well as for, you know, we're talking about the planet to heal. And it really does begin with one. You know, it begins with one, it begins with 8, it begins with 200, it begins with 3, it begins with 2. It begins anywhere you decide to choose love. That's really what I feel. And that's what I feel like the shift is all about, and especially into speaking our truth. And I wanted to read a poem from Surreal Love, Kundalini Awakening Poetry, my collection that I published in February. It's called Letting Go, Being Me. Looking forward, walking forward, letting myself witness, easing into me. A new feeling of love, openness, possibilities, change. Letting go of the fear, accepting and unfolding. Clarity, knowing, uncovering, and building me. Showing my messy, flamboyant, radical, questionable, open self. It is liberating and terrifying, like confronting a lioness in the wild. Yet the lioness is me. Happy to close the false doors and thrashing through like a raging river, turbulently flowing into the ocean. And you know, the reason why I chose confronting a lioness in the wild, it's like the scary beast is actually ourselves. You know, we're so afraid of showing up, and our fears are all inside of us. But when we actually just show up and we allow and we open our hearts, it's not that scary anymore. You know, it becomes, we're playing a different game, and we're in a different paradigm completely, and we just open our hearts more and more and more. You know, it's just like, it's ever flowing, it's ever expanding, it's reaching new heights. And you know, when we multiply it with more people, it just becomes, you know, unity consciousness becomes oneness. It becomes this healing force. And if you're interested, Lynne McTaggart is offering on Friday, May 21st, another intention experiment for the Arab-Israeli conflict. I will be joining. So if that interests you, you can actually experience the power of 8 through her program. It's free. You know, you just join and you sign up, and I'll put the details in the notes. And I'm very excited to join and to be part of it, because I was really feeling into, how can I do more? How can I pray with others for peace? And then I, you know, read the book, it showed up, and I am going to join this, and I'm thinking about doing it in my own neighborhood. So the more that we create these containers of truth and opening our hearts and being vulnerable, you know, we shift the world. We shift ourselves and the world and others. So I feel like we're in a very powerful time, and I am inviting you to choose love. And if you're finding yourself still, you know, still questioning or not sure of what to do, definitely schedule a call with me for 15 minutes for free, and we can chat and we can discuss where you're at. You know, we rise together. That's what the power of eight's all about, rising together and believing in new possibilities, new neurons, new ways of being. And that's the shift. You know, when I was first reading the power of eight, I thought, oh yeah, it's so similar to what my parents used to do when I was young. But you know, the difference is that consciousness, it's being conscious of what's happening. And that, I wasn't conscious when I was younger. Even though I was doing certain things, I wasn't fully conscious of my capabilities. I wasn't even conscious of my divinity, of my own powers. And that's what I feel is a shift. It's this consciousness, it's this awareness, it's this commitment to the present moment, and to opening our hearts and continuing to heal and heal each other in the process. And this selfless giving, that's a part of it, but it's all about being conscious of it, you know, and still allowing more and more to surrender. So that's the message today, is to choose love over fear, and to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to open your heart, and to open up for your life to shift, and to speak your truth, and to live your purpose by continuing to surrender deeper and deeper to your own divinity. And to work with others in the process. So if anything I've said to you today has resonated, all of the information is in the details, and I look forward to seeing you and meeting you. And you know, I'm just really grateful that you're listening to this podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at gila@gilanehemia.com. I have a number of different programs, and I have just been certified to do quantum healings. That's going to be a part of my programs as well. So I'm very, very excited about that. More to come. And if you want more of my poetry, feel free to connect to any online reseller that you know of, both in paperback and ebook. Surreal Love, Kundalini Awakening Poetry. Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening. I am consciously closing this container and thanking our guides, God, our fairies, all of our light teams that assisted us in this session. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Namaste, Om Shanti, Shalom.